They ignored the warning. Now the humans hunt them without mercy. Per 1. The warning. The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Dauntless. Alan Morris stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the approaching Vuldari ship grow larger against the backdrop of unfamiliar constellations. At 45, Alan had spent most of his adult life preparing for this moment. First contact with an advanced alien civilization. "They're hailing us again, sir," said Communications Officer Pam Green. "Same message as before." Alan nodded. "Put it through." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the purple-skinned face of Ambassador Carthul. The Vuldari's 4 eyes blinked in an unsettling pattern, and the translator converted the clicks and whistles of his speech into English. "Human vessel, this is your final notice. You will present yourselves for evaluation at the coordinates we have provided. The Vuldari Imperium has ruled these sectors for 10,000 years. Your species will be catalogued and assigned appropriate status within our dominion." Alan stepped forward. "Ambassador Carthul, as I've explained in our previous communications, we come representing a free and independent Earth. We seek peaceful exchange between our civilizations, but we do not submit to evaluation or dominion. We propose instead a meeting of equals." The alien's upper eyes narrowed while the lower pair widened, an expression Alan's cultural team believed indicated amusement or contempt. "Equals?" The translator couldn't quite capture the tone, but the meaning was clear. "Your species has barely left its home system. Our empire spans hundreds of worlds. You travel in ships that would be considered museum pieces by our standards. Technological advancement isn't the only measure of a civilization," Alan replied, calmly. "We have much to offer in cultural exchange, scientific cooperation." "You have nothing we need," Carthul interrupted. "Your proposal is rejected. Report for evaluation or return to your solar system. Those are your options." Alan felt a familiar tension in his shoulders, but kept his expression neutral. 20 years in diplomatic service had taught him to hide his emotions. "Before you dismiss us, I strongly suggest your leadership consider the full implications of forcing a confrontation with humanity." For the first time, all 4 of Carthul's eyes focused directly on Alan. "Is that a threat, small creature?" "It's a warning from one sentient species to another. Throughout our history, humans have faced seemingly impossible odds against more powerful opponents. Those who underestimated us rarely had the opportunity to make the same mistake twice." Behind him, Alan heard Captain Diana Carter shift uncomfortably. She had opposed this approach, preferring a more conciliatory tone. But Alan had convinced the Earth Council that the Vuldari would only respect strength. "We have studied your history, human. You fight amongst yourselves over resources, religion, and territory. Your weapons are primitive. Your lifespans are brief. You are divided by nationalism and tribal thinking." The Vuldari leaned closer to the screen. "In short, you are exactly like 100 other species we have incorporated into our Imperium." Alan smiled slightly. "Then you haven't studied us carefully enough." The meeting continued for another hour, but Alan knew they had reached an impasse. The Vuldari saw humans as simply another primitive race to be catalogued and controlled. They had no interest in true diplomacy. 3 days later, the Dauntless docked at Outpost Sigma, the newest human settlement on the edge of explored space. Alan immediately requested an emergency meeting with Governor Rita Ortiz. "They won't negotiate," Alan explained, displaying the recordings of his conversations with the Vuldari. "Their civilization is thousands of years older than ours. They see us as children, or worse, as pets to be managed." Governor Ortiz frowned. "The Earth Council won't like this. They were hoping for technology exchange, trade agreements." "The Vuldari have no concept of trade between unequals," Alan replied. "To them, we're simply another species to be absorbed into their empire." "What do you recommend?" Alan pulled up a star map. "We need to fortify every colony. Recall non-essential personnel from the border outposts. And most importantly, we need to accelerate the Defender program." "Those ships are still experimental," Ortiz protested. "The stealth systems haven't been fully tested. We don't have time for more tests." The Fuldari won't respect our boundaries. Eventually, they'll decide to make an example of us. His words proved prophetic sooner than even he had feared. 2 weeks later, Alan was reviewing cultural data when the alarm sounded throughout Outpost Sigma. He rushed to the command center, where Governor Ortiz stood frozen before a view screen, showing live feeds from 3 human colonies. They were under attack. Fuldari ships, massive compared to human vessels, hung over each settlement. Energy beams sliced through defensive shields as if they weren't there. Buildings collapsed. Atmosphere vented into space from breached domes. They didn't even declare war, whispered Ortiz. No warning at all. They don't see it as war, Alan replied, his voice tight with anger. This is pest control to them. The casualty reports came in over the next 24 hours. 3,000 colonists dead at Harper's World, 1,500 at New Montana, over 5,000 at Proxima Colony. The Fuldari had specifically targeted population centers, communication arrays, and defense installations. The message was clear: submit or be eliminated. The Earth Council convened an emergency session. Alan watched from Outpost Sigma as representatives from every nation argued about the appropriate response. Some advocated immediate surrender to prevent further loss of life. Others demanded all-out war despite the technological disadvantage. Finally, Susan Hayes, commander of Earth's Defense Force, took the floor. The Fuldari believe they can eliminate us as a potential threat while we're still developing our interstellar capabilities, she said. They expect us to either surrender or launch a desperate, doomed counterattack. We will do neither. She turned to face the camera, and Alan felt as if she were looking directly at him. Humanity has faced extinction-level threats before. We have survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own technological mistakes. We will survive this. Her voice hardened. More than survive, we will prevail. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in 70 years, Earth declared a state of global emergency. All resources would be directed toward a single goal: survival. That night, Alan recorded a final message to the Fuldari. He knew they would dismiss it, but future historians needed to know that humans had tried every peaceful option. You have attacked our colonies without provocation or warning, he said, looking directly into the camera. You have killed thousands of innocent civilians. You believe your technological advantage makes this a simple conquest. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Throughout our history, humans have been at our most dangerous when cornered. We adapt, we improvise, and we never, ever forget our enemies. Alan leaned closer. You had a chance for peace. Instead, you chose to make an example of us. Remember that choice in the days to come, because now we will make an example of you. The Fuldari High Command received his message 3 days later. High Commander Zexnar watched it with his council, then dismissed it with a laugh. Let them threaten, he told his subordinates. Their technology is primitive. Their military is untested in space warfare. We will crush their remaining outposts, and they will submit like all the others. It was the last time Zexnar would laugh about humans. The hunt was about to begin. They ignored the warning. Now the humans hunt them without mercy. Part 3. The hunt intensifies. 1 year had passed since the first human strike against Krell Station. What the Fuldari had initially dismissed as lucky hits had evolved into something they had never experienced before: fear. In his private chambers aboard the Fuldari command ship Dominant Will, Admiral Kretzar reviewed the latest security reports. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he scrolled through the data. Another supply convoy lost, a communications relay disabled, a military outpost abandoned after 3 separate intrusions. A soft tone announced the arrival of his security chief. Enter, Kretzar called. The door slid open to reveal Security Director Velmore, his purple skin pale with exhaustion. Admiral, we've lost contact with Colonial Station 7. Kretzar's upper eyes narrowed. The mining colony? There are 10,000 civilians there. Yes, sir. All communications ceased 3 hours ago. We've dispatched 2 battlecruisers to investigate. Recall them immediately, Kretzar ordered, rising from his seat. It's a trap. The humans know our response protocols now. They're using our own patterns against us. Velmore hesitated. But the civilians will likely be unharmed, Kretzar finished. That's their pattern. They disable, infiltrate, gather intelligence, and leave. No unnecessary casualties, but our military vessels make tempting targets. As predicted, when contact was finally re-established with Colonial Station 7, civilians reported a brief power outage followed by strange occurrences. Security systems had reset. Storage inventories showed missing materials, and most disturbingly, the station's main computer had been accessed, though no one could determine what information had been taken. The only clue was a message left in the governor's personal quarters. You were warned. Thousands of light years away, Major Kyle Bennett led his team through the final decontamination chamber aboard the human stealth vessel Shadow. His soldiers moved with the efficient silence that had become their trademark. Each wore lightweight, armor salvaged and modified from Voldari designs, making them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. Mission successful, Captain, Bennett reported as he entered the bridge. We obtained the mineral samples, the refining data, and copied their star charts for sectors 12 through 17. Captain Ellen Ward nodded. Casualties? None, ma'am. We were in and out before they knew what happened. Their security's improving, though. They've started using randomized patrol patterns. They're learning, Ward replied. Too late, but they're learning. On the command screen, a new set of coordinates appeared. Their next target. Bennett studied the information. A research facility? That's deep in their territory. Intelligence thinks they're developing new sensor arrays that might be able to detect our stealth systems, Ward explained. We need to know what they know. My team will be ready in 6 hours. The human strikes were no longer random. A carefully coordinated strategy had emerged, targeting specific weaknesses in the vast Voldari infrastructure. Supply depots raided for critical materials. Research facilities infiltrated for their data. Military outposts studied, then disabled. What terrified the Voldari most was their inability to capture or even detect the human ships until it was too late. Conventional wisdom said such stealth technology should be impossible. Yet the evidence of human ingenuity was becoming impossible to deny. In the Grand Council chamber on the Voldari homeworld, High Commander Zexnar faced growing opposition. Once the unquestioned leader of the Imperium's military forces, he now found himself defending his initial decision to attack the human colonies. These raids are merely annoyances, he insisted to the assembled council. The humans lack the numbers and resources for a full-scale war. They're using these tactics because they have no other options. A council member stood. My district has lost 3 supply shipments in the past month. Factory production is down 30% due to material shortages. These are not mere annoyances. Another added, my security forces report increasing unrest. The public is asking questions we cannot answer. How can a species we dismissed as primitive evade our most advanced defenses? Zexnar's temper flared. Enough. I will not have this body succumb to panic over the actions of savages. I've authorized the formation of special hunter squadrons to track and eliminate these human vessels. This problem will be solved within the cycle. But the hunter squadrons found no prey. Instead, they often became victims themselves, returning to base with critical systems disabled, weapons mysteriously offline, and the same message left in their computers. You were warned. Dr. Nicole Porter hunched over her workstation in the hidden human research facility buried beneath Europa's ice. Around her, a team of scientists analyzed the latest Voldari technology salvaged from their raids. This is remarkable, she said, examining a communication device. Their quantum entanglement system allows instant communication across any distance. If we can reverse engineer this, her assistant nodded, it would change everything. Our ships could coordinate attacks without revealing their positions. Nicole's work was only one part of a massive human effort. While stealth ships conducted raids, scientists like Nicole worked tirelessly to understand and adapt Voldari technology. Engineers developed new weapons specifically designed to target Voldari weaknesses. Intelligence officers cultivated relationships with other species who had suffered under Vuldari expansion. The war effort consumed every aspect of human society. Old nations set aside their differences to focus on a single goal: survival. Resources were pooled. Knowledge was shared. A species that had spent much of its history fighting itself now turned that same determination toward a common enemy. In a secure bunker on Earth, Commander Susan Hayes reviewed the latest reports with her war council. The room was simple but functional, dominated by a large holographic display showing Vuldari territory and the locations of recent human operations. Phase 1 is complete, announced Intelligence Director Greg Butler. We've mapped their primary, supply lines, defensive positions, and communication networks. We've also identified 17 species within the Imperium who might be sympathetic to our cause. Hayes nodded. And the prototype? Chief Scientist Alan Cohen looked up from his datapad. The Defender ships are ready. 6 vessels equipped with all the technology we've salvaged and improved. They're faster, more heavily armed, and still virtually undetectable to Vuldari sensors. It's time for Phase 2, Hayes decided. Target their military leadership. Make them understand there is nowhere they can hide from us. 3 days later, High Commander Zexnar disappeared from his heavily guarded compound on the Vuldari homeworld. Security footage showed nothing. Guards reported seeing nothing unusual. He was simply gone from his private chambers, with no signs of struggle or forced entry. The Vuldari Imperium went into a frenzy. Security forces were doubled at all government facilities. Military vessels were recalled to protect core worlds. Fear, an emotion the Vuldari had rarely experienced as a species, began to spread from the highest levels of leadership down to ordinary citizens. 3 days after his disappearance, Zexnar's image appeared on every communication device throughout Vuldari space. His 4 eyes were wide with an emotion no Vuldari could mistake: terror. I ordered the attack on human colonies without provocation, his recorded message began. I dismissed their warnings. I underestimated their resolve, and now they hunt us. The message continued, detailing the deliberations that had led to the attack on human settlements and acknowledging the error of that decision. It ended with words that would echo throughout the Imperium. They do not want our surrender. They do not want our territory. They want justice, and they will not stop until they have it. When the message ended, panic erupted throughout the Imperium, and in the darkness between the stars, human ships continued to hunt. They ignored the warning. Now the humans hunt them without mercy. Part 2. The First Strike Back 6. Months passed after the Vuldari attacks. To the purple-skinned aliens, it seemed that the humans had retreated to lick their wounds. The Vuldari, media celebrated their easy victory. Military experts praised High Commander Zexnar's decision to crush the human threat before it could develop further. The topic of humanity was already fading from public discussion throughout the Imperium. This was a mistake. Deep within the asteroid belt of the Tau Ceti system, far from any official human colony, Chief Engineer Olivia Dean wiped sweat from her forehead as she examined the twisted piece of Vuldari technology. The chunk of metal and circuitry had once been part of an enemy fighter craft, recovered from the debris field around Harper's world. "Try it now," she called to her assistant. The young engineer activated the device. This time, instead of sparking and shutting down, the alien metal hummed softly. A holographic display flickered to life, showing Vuldari symbols. Olivia smiled, for the first time in weeks. "Record everything," she ordered. "Then get this to Captain Miller immediately." 2 systems away, Captain Frank Miller stood in the command center of the newly commissioned vessel that officially didn't exist. The Nemesis was unlike any ship humanity had built before. Where most human vessels were bulky and practical, the Nemesis was sleek and dark, designed to absorb rather than reflect sensor scans. Its engines were modified to leave minimal energy signatures. Its weapon systems were unlike anything in the official Earth Defense Force inventory. "Report," Miller said as his executive officer entered the room. "Engineer Dean's team has done it, sir. said Lieutenant Ben Garcia, handing over a datapad. They've cracked the Voldari shield frequency modulation. According to these tests, our new EMP weapons should bypass their defensive screens completely. Miller studied the data. Time to test it in the field. Have all crew at battle stations in 6 hours. Set course for the Voldari outpost at Krell Station. Krell Station orbited a lifeless moon in a system the Voldari had claimed centuries ago. It served as a monitoring post and supply depot for their border patrols. The station was lightly defended, home to approximately 200 Voldari military personnel. None of them expected any trouble as they went about their daily routines. Approaching target, reported the Nemesis's pilot, a woman named Claire Wilson. Her fingers moved steadily over the controls as the ship glided silently through space, its advanced stealth systems rendering it practically invisible to Voldari sensors. Any sign they've detected us? Miller asked. Negative, sir, replied the sensor officer. Their patrol ships are maintaining standard orbit. Station defenses are not on alert. Miller nodded. Weapon status? EMP generators charged and ready, responded Weapons Officer Jeff Martinez. Targeting systems locked on their main power core and communication array. Miller looked around the bridge. The faces of his crew were tense but determined. Each person had lost someone in the colony attacks. Each had volunteered for this mission, knowing it might be a one-way trip. Remember our orders, Miller said. No unnecessary casualties. We're sending a message today, not starting a massacre. Launch when ready. Martinez pressed the firing control. From the underside of the Nemesis, a pair of projectiles shot toward the Voldari station. They were too small to trigger defensive systems and too fast to track visually. When they detonated near the station, there was no explosion, just a pulse of energy that human sensors could barely detect. On Krell Station, every system suddenly failed. Lights went out. Life support switched to emergency backups. Weapons systems shut down completely. Communications died mid-transmission. Direct hit, Martinez confirmed. Their systems are offline, estimate 2 minutes before emergency power activates. Move us in, ordered Miller. Deploy the package. The Nemesis glided closer to the crippled station. A small craft detached from its hull and approached the Voldari facility. Inside, a team led by Lieutenant Maria Torres worked quickly to attach a device to the station's outer hull. Package delivered, Torres reported 90 seconds later. Transmitter is active. Message loaded. All personnel back aboard, confirmed Garcia. Ready to withdraw. Miller nodded. Take us out maximum speed. Set course for rendezvous point Alpha. The Nemesis vanished into the darkness of space just as emergency lighting flickered on throughout Krell Station. The confused Voldari rushed to restore their systems, trying to understand what had happened. When their communications came back online, they found a message waiting for them, broadcast not only to the station, but to every Voldari communication channel in the sector. The Archeo. Message was a video showing the destruction of the human colonies. It then cut to a simple statement in the Voldari language. This is merely the beginning. When news of the attack reached the Voldari High Command, Zexnar was furious. How had humans penetrated so far into Imperium space? How had they disabled a military installation without firing a single destructive shot? Most importantly, how had they bypassed Voldari defenses so completely? It was luck, insisted his military advisor. Their primitive technology must have had an unexpected effect on our systems. This is not a serious threat. Zexnar wasn't convinced. Increase patrols along all borders. Upgrade defensive protocols at all outposts. I want a full analysis of what happened at Krell Station. But the data from Krell provided few answers. The station's sensors had recorded nothing unusual before the systems failed. The few exterior cameras had caught only a brief glimpse of a dark shape that matched no known ship design. 2 weeks later, it happened again. A mining facility on the outer rim went dark for 3 hours. When systems came back online, all the facility's navigational data had been copied. Nothing was damaged, but the same message appeared on their screens. This is merely the beginning. 3 days after that, A Vuldari patrol vessel disappeared completely. When it was finally located, the crew was found unharmed, but locked in the ship's hibernation pods. The vessel's weapons had been carefully dismantled, its sensor logs erased and its hull marked with a new symbol, a silhouette of Earth with a sword through it. In an emergency session of the Vuldari High Council, Admiral Kretzar addressed the alarmed officials. These are not random attacks. The humans are gathering intelligence, they're testing our responses, they're learning our weaknesses. Impossible, argued another council member. They are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Then explain how they disabled 3 facilities without casualties, Kretzar countered. Explain how they evade our most advanced detection systems. Explain how they broadcast messages on our secure channels. The council fell silent. They warned us, Kretzar continued quietly. Their diplomat warned us that we were underestimating them. I believe we may have made a grave error in dismissing the human threat. Zexnar rose from his seat, eyes flashing with anger. 1 outpost and 2 minor facilities. This is hardly cause for alarm. I will not have the Imperium cower before a species that barely understands space travel. But as the weeks passed, more reports came in. Small, strategic strikes against Vuldari infrastructure. No deaths, but clear demonstrations that the humans could hit any target they chose. Each attack was followed by the same message, now feared. Throughout the border regions, this is merely the beginning. The hunt had begun. And the Vuldari, for the first time in centuries, found themselves as prey. They ignored the warning. Now the humans hunt them without mercy. Part 4. The breaking point. 3 years into the conflict, the mighty Vuldari Imperium was beginning to fracture. What had started as a simple, preventative action against a supposedly primitive species had evolved into a nightmare with no end in sight. Governor Trelmok of the Vuldari colony world Zenth Prime sat in his secure office, staring at the encrypted message on his private terminal. The words blurred as his 4 eyes struggled to focus after days without proper rest. The message was from another governor in a neighboring system, the 5th such communication he had received in recent weeks. We cannot continue this way, the message read. My people suffer from supply shortages. Our defense forces are stretched thin. The humans strike at will, and the High Command offers no solutions. Perhaps it is time to consider separate arrangements. Trelmok understood the unspoken suggestion. Treason against the Imperium had once been unthinkable. Now survival was the priority. He composed a careful reply. I share your concerns. Direct communication may be warranted. Across Vuldari space, similar conversations were happening. The once unified Imperium was splintering under the pressure of a war unlike any they had faced before. The humans didn't seek to conquer territory or demand resources. They simply appeared, struck, and vanished, leaving fear and uncertainty in their wake. In orbit around Saturn, Admiral Lisa Sanchez reviewed the latest intelligence reports aboard the command vessel Constitution. The ship was one of the new, Defender-class vessels, built with technology reverse-engineered from Vuldari designs but improved by human innovation. Unlike the earlier stealth ships, the Defenders were larger and more powerful, capable of directly engaging Vuldari warships if necessary. We've received another request for private communication, reported her communications officer. This one's from the governor of Zenth Prime. Sanchez nodded. That makes 7 colonies in the past month. Same response as the others. We will consider individual surrenders only after the central authority acknowledges their crimes and submits to our terms. Her second-in-command, Captain Roy Parker, approached with a datapad. Admiral, we've detected unusual movement in the Vuldari fleet. Multiple battle groups are converging near their homeworld. It appears they're preparing for something big. Sanchez studied the tactical display showing the movement of Vuldari ships. They're gathering their forces, a desperate move. She activated the ship-wide communication system. All command staff to the strategic room immediately. 20 minutes later, Sanchez addressed the assembled officers. The room was designed for secure briefings, with advanced holographic displays showing real-time data from across the theater of operations. Intelligence suggests the Vuldari military has split into factions, she explained. One group, led by Commander Vrenthal, believes surrender is their only option. The other, under War Minister Dozmak, favors a final, desperate strike. The holographic display shifted to show Earth. We believe Dozmak plans to launch an all-out attack on Earth itself, Sanchez continued. He hopes that by threatening our homeworld, he can force us to accept terms favorable to the Imperium. The room remained silent as the implications sank, and after 3 years of carefully measured responses, the humans now faced a direct threat to Earth. What are our options? Asked Captain Parker. We intercept and neutralize their fleet before they reach Earth, Sanchez replied. This is what we've been preparing for. Signal all defender ships to converge at these coordinates and contact our allies. Across human territory, ships that had been hiding in deep space or conducting isolated raids began to move with purpose. The scattered hunters were coming together for a coordinated strike. Meanwhile, on a small, unremarkable planet at the edge of Vuldari space, engineer Jack Peterson supervised the final adjustments to a massive device hidden beneath the surface. The installation had taken months to build in secret, with components smuggled in by stealth ships and assembled by human teams working around the clock. Power readings are stable, reported a technician. Field generators are aligned within parameters. Peterson nodded. Begin the activation sequence. Inform Admiral Sanchez that checkmate is online. For 3 years, humans had deliberately held back their full technological capabilities. While their raids and strikes had been impressive, they were merely a fraction of what humanity had developed. The Vuldari, in their arrogance, had never considered that their own technology could be not just copied, but improved upon by human ingenuity. On the Vuldari command ship Inevitable Victory, War Minister Dozmak addressed his loyal commanders. His plan was simple: gather overwhelming force and strike directly at the human homeworld. The humans had shown themselves unwilling to risk civilian casualties. Surely they would surrender rather than see Earth destroyed. Our ancestors built this Imperium through strength, Dozmak declared. We will not be the generation that loses it due to fear of primitive creatures. Once we control their homeworld, these raids will end. The humans will have no choice but to submit. Commander Krelvor, his most trusted officer, looked troubled. Minister, our intelligence on human defenses is limited. Their stealth technology has prevented full assessment of their capabilities. They are hiding because they are weak, Dozmak insisted. Their tactics rely on deception because they cannot face us directly. When confronted with superior force, they will break. The Vuldari battle fleet jumped into hyperspace. Over 200 warships headed for Earth. By Vuldari military doctrine, it was an unstoppable force, more than enough to overwhelm any planetary defenses. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, expecting to achieve surprise. Instead, they found themselves facing an assembled fleet of 50 human vessels, smaller than Vuldari ships but arrayed in a precise formation. More shocking were the ships from 3 other species, former Vuldari subjects who had quietly allied with humanity. Before Dozmak could issue orders, a transmission cut across all Vuldari communication channels. The face of Admiral Lisa Sanchez appeared on every screen. War Minister Dozmak, your fleet is surrounded. Surrender your vessels or be destroyed. Dozmak laughed. Surrounded? By this pitiful force? Your bluff is pathetic, human. This is not a bluff, Sanchez replied calmly. Look behind you. As the Vuldari sensors swept the area behind their fleet, they detected energy signatures appearing where none had been before. Dozens of human ships decloaking, weapons ready, but more terrifying was the massive energy field forming around the entire Vuldari fleet, cutting off their hyperspace escape route. Impossible, whispered Commander Krelvor. No species has this technology. On his command ship, Dozmak faced a reality his people had refused to accept. Humans were not merely cunning. They had surpassed Vuldari technology while letting the Imperium believe they were still primitives, fighting against impossible odds. This is your only warning. Sanchez's voice continued. Power down your weapons or we will disable your fleet by force. Dozmak's pride wouldn't allow surrender. All ships battle formation, target the human vessels and fire at will. The Vuldari ships fired their main weapons, and watched in shock as the energy beams dissipated harmlessly against previously invisible shields. Then the human fleet responded. Unlike the Vuldari's destructive approach, the human weapons targeted specific systems, engines, weapons, life support control. Ship after ship in the Vuldari fleet went dark or drifted powerless. Some captains, seeing the futility of resistance, surrendered immediately. Within an hour, the battle was over. The mighty invasion force had been neutralized without a single ship destroyed. War Minister Dozmak was taken into custody, his flagship boarded by Major Bennett's Special Forces team. As he was led away in restraints, Dozmak finally asked the question that had haunted the Vuldari for 3 years. How? How did primitives defeat the greatest fleet in the galaxy? Engineer Jack Peterson, who had boarded to examine Vuldari technology, looked up from his work and gave a simple answer. We were never primitives. We just let you think we were. They ignored the warning. Now the humans hunt them without mercy. Part 5. Reckoning and Aftermath 5. Years after the Vuldari's initial attack on human colonies, representatives from both species gathered in the neutral space of Europa Station. The massive space habitat orbiting Jupiter's moon had been specially constructed for this historic meeting. Its central chamber featured a circular table where the fate of the once mighty Vuldari Imperium would be decided. Sophia Williams, Earth's chief diplomat, entered the chamber flanked by Admiral Lisa Sanchez and Alan Morris, the diplomat who had delivered humanity's original warning years ago. Across from them sat the Vuldari delegation, led by Acting High Governor Velsar. The purple-skinned aliens appeared diminished somehow, their usual proud posture replaced by a wary caution. This council is now in session, announced the neutral mediator, a representative from the Galactic Association of Independent Species. We are here to formalize the terms of peace between humanity and the Vuldari Imperium. Sophia stepped forward with a datapad containing the peace terms. Her expression remained neutral, but those who knew her could see the emotion she held in check. Her younger brother had been among those killed in the attack on Harper's world. The terms are as follows, she began. The Vuldari Imperium will dismantle 90% of its military fleet. Monitoring stations will be established on key Vuldari worlds to ensure compliance. Reparations will be paid to the families affected by the initial attacks, and all species currently under Vuldari control will be given the choice of independence. Velsar's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. These terms are unexpectedly merciful. Beside him, a military advisor whispered urgently, clearly disappointed by the lack of harsher punishments. Alan Morris, now showing the gray hair and lined face that came from 5 years of war, spoke up. Did you expect extermination? That was never our goal. After what we did, after how we dismissed your warnings. Velsar trailed off. We are not you, Sophia stated simply. We wanted justice, not revenge. We wanted security, not domination. The signing ceremony was brief. When it concluded, the Vuldari Imperium effectively ceased to exist as the dominant power it had been for 10,000 years. In its place would rise a confederation of worlds, with the Vuldari as just one member among equals. As the delegates filed out, Alan found himself walking alongside an elderly Vuldari he recognized with shock as Ambassador Carthul, the same diplomat who had dismissed humanity's warnings at first contact. You, Alan said, stopping in his tracks. The old Vuldari nodded, his once vibrant purple skin now pale and mottled with age. I requested to be part of this delegation. I felt I should witness the results of my failure. Your failure? To understand your species, Carthul replied. I saw only your technological limitations. I failed to recognize what truly makes humans dangerous. Alan studied the alien who had once looked at him with such contempt. And what is that, in your opinion? You adapt. You turn weaknesses into strengths. You study your enemies and use their own power against them. The old Voldari's voice lowered. And most terrifying of all, you cooperate despite your differences when faced with a common threat. Alan couldn't argue with that assessment. The war had united humanity as nothing before. Old national rivalries had faded in importance compared to species survival. Resources and knowledge were shared freely. The result had been technological advancement at a pace even humans found astonishing. 6 months after the peace treaty, Frank Miller, now an ambassador rather than a captain, walked through the bustling corridors of New Harper's World. The colony, rebuilt on the site of one of the original Voldari attacks, served as a symbol of human resilience. More surprising, were the Voldari now living and working alongside humans in the settlement. Still getting used to it? Asked Governor Rita Ortiz as she joined him on his inspection tour. Miller nodded. Every time I see one of them, I remember our first missions, the hunting, the fear we wanted them to feel. Times change, Ortiz replied. We can't live in the past, even one as recent as this. They stopped at the colony's education center, where a young Voldari named Trelvin was teaching a group of mixed species children about stellar navigation. Trelvin had been one of the first Voldari to volunteer for the cultural exchange program, seeking to understand the species that had so thoroughly defeated his own. Ambassador Miller, Trelvin greeted him with the human-style nod he had adopted. The children were just asking about your experiences during the conflict. Miller looked at the eager faces, human, Voldari, and 2 other species that had joined. The growing interstellar community centered around Earth. What would you like to know? A human girl raised her hand. Is it true you could make your ships invisible? Miller smiled. Not invisible, just very hard to detect. A young Voldari with bright purple skin asked, why didn't humans destroy our worlds when they could have? My parent says your ships could have bombed our planets easily. The question silenced the room. Miller considered his answer carefully. Because that wasn't the point, he finally said. We didn't want to destroy you. We wanted you to understand, to recognize that technological superiority doesn't guarantee victory, and that dismissing someone as primitive is a dangerous mistake. Back on Earth, in a quiet garden outside the rebuilt United Nations complex, Sophia Williams met with representatives from 17 newly independent species. For 10,000 years, these races had lived under Voldari control. Now they were taking their first steps as free peoples. We seek guidance, not control, explained an avian being from the Krell system. Humanity defeated the Imperium but did not replace it with your own. This is unprecedented in our history. Sophia gestured to the garden around them, where plants from a dozen worlds grew together. This is our vision for the galaxy. Different species growing alongside each other, each unique, each valuable. And if another empire rises, another species that believes might makes right? Asked a reptilian delegate. Commander Susan Hayes, now heading Earth's new interstellar defense force, answered that question. Then they will face not just humanity, but all of us together. The Voldari taught us an important lesson. No species can stand alone forever. Across the settled worlds, a new understanding emerged. Humanity's response to the Voldari attack became a cautionary tale, taught in the diplomatic academies of a dozen species. The humans did not start conflicts, but they would finish them. They valued peace but prepared relentlessly for war. They forgave, but never forgot. In the Hall of Remembrance on New Harper's World, a simple monument listed the names of those lost in the initial Voldari attacks. Beside it stood a plaque with words that echoed through the new interstellar community. They ignored the warning. They learned the cost. May no species make this mistake again. And in the darkness between the stars, human ships still patrolled, not hunting now, but watching, ready